Okay, so how many of you have met someone who is bad at test taking or is good at test taking, or someone who's book smart but just doesn't test well? That's why standardized testing doesn't make much sense for our school system. So everybody knows that one person who's smart, they know the information, they just get stressed with the test and have no way to show that they know the information that they do. And then there's the opposite person who doesn't study, doesn't know the information, and just happens to get really lucky and test really well. And of course, as you know, the person who doesn't study, doesn't know the information, and just tests well, that's the person that's going to get the higher score, which just isn't fair for the student who clearly does know what they're talking about. And that's why standardized testing should not be so crucial to a student's future. I'm in my second year of college, as y'all know, and I've taken numerous standardized tests that have had effects on my future, and so that is why I'm talking about this today. So my first point is that standardized testing only measures a small amount of the information that a student actually needs to know. According to a study done by Lynn Olson, as she described in her Education Week article, the standardized testing are an unrealistic measure of students' performance. In fact, all of the polls that you see of student scores improving are 50 to 80% of them are just natural fluctuation, not long-term. As the environment improves around children, their grades are going to improve by generations, but that's not a significant improvement. Next, we've noticed that instructional time is being replaced by test preparation. So the teachers are not teaching so that their students learn, they're teaching so that their students get higher on the test in order for them to keep their job. According to Valerie Strauss, as she described in her Washington Post article, she found a group of 3rd to 8th grade students who were forced to practice for testing for weeks and even months because their scores were so low the last time they took them. And all of that time, they could have been teaching actually useful information. She also, in speaking to the teachers of those students, found that they're forced to teach for the test, not for the student to learn the information. It doesn't allow for any kind of creative thinking because there's either one right or one wrong answer. There's no variation when in the real world there's not always one exact answer. The same teachers also said that they spent so much time on test prep, they didn't have time to give their students an outlet for creativity, so they're just forced to do this black and white, right or wrong kind of learning that really is not good for their future. My next point is that standardized tests are not objective. So according to Peter Sachs, he says that standardized testing are not adequate in judging a student's understanding. So like I said before, there was the student who knows the information, they just have a hard time portraying it onto a test, and then there's a student who doesn't actually know the information, they're just good at picking a 1 in 4 chance. And going back to Valerie Strauss, she says that standardized testing with high stakes leads to superficial learners. So essentially they learn as much as they need to get a high score on the test, but don't go any deeper into that subject, so they're only learning it on the most basic level. My last point for today is that standardized testing does not prepare the students for adult life. According to a Bronson and Merriman study, as they described in a Newsweek article, so there are intelligent quotient scores, which is IQ, everyone knows that, and there's also creativity quotient, which is the same sort of testing, but it's creativity instead of intelligence. So in America, they go up 10 points every generation. Like I said before, the environment helps with that. But overall, the United States creativity quotient has actually gone down. And the main point that they test in a CQ evaluation is human ingenuity. So that's what Americans are lacking the most because of the way that standardized testing has influenced the school system. Going back on that, due to the time crunch that the teachers are unable to teach current events, leaving students unaware of anything that's going on in the world when they enter adult life. Lastly, due to the test format, students are not able to learn how to form original ideas. All they know how to do is memorize critical thinking and spit it out on a test and move on. They never learn how to think for themselves and how to generate new ideas. So in conclusion, we have learned that standardized testing only tests for a small amount of information. Instructional time is replaced by test prep. Tests are not objective and they leave students unprepared for adult life. Standardized testing, or students are simply taught to get a high score on a test and left without adult skills. Not only that, but students are rewarded and penalized for skills that they will never use in their adult lives, yet these skills are drilled into them for 13 years. Thank you.
13, so